Welcome to the Without Limits podcast. Sorry, I just had to get there.
That could actually have been me, couldn't it?
It's quite nice, isn't it?
Well, we've got the Chad with us tonight.
Hello.
In the studio. And it's fair to say, given what I've just witnessed in the last 10 minutes, you're quite nervous, eh?
Yeah. I feel like I'm back at school with the head teacher. And that never went down well.
I've never seen you this nervous.
I don't really continuously talking.
Sit forward so we can hear you.
Yes, Dad. Continuously talking for 40 minutes isn't necessarily my forte, so we'll see how this goes. And also being serious for longer than 3 minutes.
We don't have to be serious.
I struggle with.
I think that's going to be the beauty of this episode. And for people that are familiar with the podcast, up until now, we've tried to kind of go 1 week guest.
Good guests.
Good guest.
1 week.
1 week, me, Marchon, and now scraping the barrel with you. But
yeah, nice.
What we now have the opportunity for is a different perspective on Marchon. Also, your opportunity or my opportunity to try and peel back some of the layers that people might not be familiar with. So the rules of the game for this next 40 to 60 minutes are no one-word answers and a level of depth to what you bring to the table. Because you're very good at just giving a good, sufficient answer so that we can move on quickly without us maybe getting into the good stuff.
Yeah.
So I know you'd be thinking about this all day, but what does Without Limits mean to you? This probably won't make the promo.
It means, after Grayson's one, we're just going from there. I've been thinking about it all day, and the first thing that came to my head was about how I live my life with no calorie restrictions. But I was like, that's not going to cut it. So for me, it's probably more of like a me versus me thing, like a you thing, rather than a big, profound philosophical answer. And it's probably to do with trying to break past any kind of limiting beliefs that I ever have or might potentially have. And every time that I have those limiting beliefs, it's always been through the actions that I'll take that I end up surpassing those limiting beliefs. And essentially that's kind of how I would wrap it around as Without Limits for me. That makes sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think actually, like, jokes aside, you do yourself a disservice when it comes to even your physique, but your mentality towards life, your mentality towards business, your mentality towards your role, sport, competition, all of those things. And the reality is for you, luckily, everything kind of goes your way because of the talent. And I think that's something that you've lent on and you can lean on, rightly so, to the point where you beat most people at most things with sometimes minimal effort. And when you do decide to tighten the screw, people just get left for dead in both, like I say, both in the fitness sense and also in a business sense because you're smart. So I think that's kind of the things I want to try and tap into. And I think some of those behaviors later in life are probably attached to maybe experiences earlier on in life. And I think from the questions that I will come on to ask at the end, which was, obviously you were there when I put out a Q&A to Instagram, what questions they have for you. I think a lot of people want to know why we're very similar, but there are also a lot of differences. So maybe we'll touch on a few of those as we kind of go through the conversation. But if we don't, then I'll kind of pull up those and be a bit more kind of quick fire with it. So how would you introduce yourself to people?
Again, this is something I find very hard because it's something, whenever I have to write a little bio or anything like that, I come to you and be like, Ollie, can you write this bio for me?
Yeah, that's fair. And it is difficult. If I was to talk about myself, I think it's very difficult. And again, I think that's why you're so endearing, is because you are actually, there's a huge level of humility. And I think to the point where you don't actually know how good you are. So we've been internally trying to, in terms of a bit of strategy this year, and you're privy to this obviously because you're an integral part to it, is trying to bring your personal brand and your personality through a little bit more into the business. So if people are listening to this that aren't familiar with you, and I don't think there'll be many, but how would you want them to, what lens would you like them to look through right now if they're landing on Chad's page?
I am a young man that enjoys training, being around cool people, learning along the way, and not necessarily taking life too seriously. But then when things need to be taken seriously, I'll get them head down and get shit done.
Yeah, perfect. And let's go back to childhood. And I don't want to make this all about kind of like the chronology of like how we've got to where we are today, but I think childhood is probably a big thing that's kind of shaped how you feel. We obviously had the same parents, so a large degree would have had a similar upbringing, you being a few years younger than me. I think I like to think that my recollection of my childhood is fairly accurate is sort of, the stuff that I put out on the early podcast episodes. But you may have some different opinions, and I welcome those. I also like to think that I somewhat paved the way for you from a relationship standpoint with Dad, so that he was a little bit softer when it came to you. That's my recollection. You may feel differently. So I think I want to sort of touch on that. Like, growing up, I was very clear on what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it. I never probably had those conversations with you, like what you wanted to be. We almost ended up just doing the same thing. And I think that's very natural for like brothers, or particularly younger brothers. I see it with Enzo and Leo. They just tend to kind of mirror what the older brother was doing. But I remember it got to a stage where with you started to not lean into that as much when it came to sport and things. And I very fondly say, I'm your biggest fan, I very fondly say that in terms of like natural ability, and that was someone's question for later on, in terms of natural ability, I think you have way more than me in most things. And there's been periods throughout our later life when you have lent into things, like when we used to do speed training, for example, you were faster than me. Same with the rugby ball. When you pick it up, you have naturally more skills than me. Same with racket sports and things. So let's go back to childhood. What were your early memories of growing up?
I mean, we literally played every sport going, didn't we? Not necessarily, we weren't part of every club going, but we'd play it on our own. Next door neighbours had tennis courts. We'd go and play cricket, but we wouldn't really be part of the cricket club. We'd go and play rugby through the season, and football through the season. So it was pretty much for me, and that's kind of where my love for, I guess, fitness is just I've played every sport, I'd watch every sport, and I don't know why at kind of stages where you potentially like pushed on with things and I necessarily didn't. I just think it was like a little bit of probably laziness, and I probably still have that today, right? Where it's just, I don't know, I feel like, or maybe a little bit of boredom within things. Like football, wasn't necessarily playing with my closest friends when I was in the Colts. I was playing with random people from different schools. Probably got a little bit bored of it. Same with rugby. And then cricket, none of my friends really play cricket. I mean, I don't know. I don't really.
Two things to pick up on, because you're right. We did play every sport under the sun. Why did we do that? Because Dad was never really encouraging us in those sports. I know that Mum did. She would drive us here, there, and everywhere at weekends.
Well, I'd probably put that down to you. I'd put down you were always playing these sports before me because of age and things like that. So you'd come home and be like, "Do you want to go play cricket in the garden?" So we go play cricket. Do you want to go? I remember me literally being a goalkeeper for you to be out there, and I was like, "Is it my turn? My turn to come out and play outfield." You're like, "No, you stay in goal."
Anyone that remembers the early episode when I spoke about the scout in the bushes, now you know that's a true story.
It is a true story. But he told me that the scout was down looking for him, not for me. So, and then the same with rugby. I mean, I wouldn't have played rugby or even wanted to play rugby unless you hadn't have played rugby. And then obviously going to the same school, we were forced to play rugby because it was the only sport that we had available to us. Yeah.
So I often look back at it and think, because you seemed like you reference it as like maybe getting bored of it or whatever. I don't know whether because I use the term highly strung. I don't know that's the right term, but because I was so hell bent on throwing myself into stuff at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it was like do or die and everything that I did, whether you just didn't want to follow that path because it just didn't seem very fun the way I would maybe view things, or there was a level of resentment when I started to break through and have some success, because I don't know whether there was a level of, and this might require you to be quite vulnerable, where there was a level of like fear of failure. Because I had some success in some things, you were like, well, am I going to be compared to his success if I don't make that grade?
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Probably still is now. That's, I mean, something that stuck with me when this is going to sound quite weird, but when we were at school, like secondary school, my PE teacher wrote me your greatest fear is not that we're inadequate. He literally wrote this to me in a parents' evening and handed this over to me. It was like, you need to stop being so fearful of, not necessarily achieving what you think you might achieve and all this nonsense. And that's something that's actually stuck with me.
You never told that story before?
Not in front of a camera, no, but it's one of my stories, yeah.
So if you're fairly aware of it, right? And aware of it in later life, and you're 33 this year, right?
Yeah.
Is it something you've taken proactive steps to kind of overcome? Because I'm sure there are many there are many people out there that maybe either have an older brother or have a inspiration that they're trying to, not saying I was your inspiration, but have someone that they're trying to like, that they look up to, or for some reason they might be in their shadow in some capacity. And there's fear of failure, so they don't actually expose themselves enough to get the lessons or get the wins from exposing themselves enough.
Yeah. Go and...
How do you overcome that? Do you take proactive steps?
It would be wait for them to start a company and then you go and work with them.
Smart. Some may call that just being smart.
It's not necessarily like a constant battle because it does bleed into a lot of the things that you do then, you know, through life. I think that it's probably magnified for me or for us because literally everything we have done has always been together. Yeah. And we're still doing it now.
Yeah. See, I actually think selfishly, I think looking back at it, it was such an advantage for me because you were naturally so good at things. I almost had the perfect, not necessarily teammate and competitor at home that I could just be so competitive with. Even if you weren't, like, it wasn't reciprocal in terms of how you viewed I was playing in the back garden or I was playing tennis. It would always end up in a fight and we'd fall out in some way, shape or form.
Although you did say that I'd always start crying, which is not true. Not true. Not true.
I like to pick myself up every now and again. So, you know, I that's probably was a competitive advantage, right? Having someone that you can go home and I can just practice stuff with, whether it was sticking you in goal and just practicing free kicks or going next door and playing tennis. You could pick things up really quickly to the point where as 3 years my younger, I could still have it. When you got to a certain age, I could still have a competitive kickabout or a knockabout with a tennis racket that was going to benefit my skills or I could learn something from, which is pretty key. And now in later life, you know, in this business sense, like your skill sets 110% complement the areas where I'm not as efficient or not as good. So giving you a backhanded compliment there, but I think
appreciate it. I mean, on that as well, I'd probably say, just thinking about childhood, I was, and maybe this is the same for every brother, but 99% more competitive in terms of how I would approach things when I was just doing it with you. So if we were playing tennis, I'd be more competitive there than, or, you know, even rugby. I remember like stepping onto a rugby field and actually not really caring about what the score was, whether we won, whether we didn't win. I mean, I'd be pissed off, but I wouldn't be half as pissed off as if like you and me were in the garden and doing like a run it straight challenge or something.
That's interesting.
And maybe that's definitely in my like later years as well playing rugby. Like I could not care whether we won or lost really.
Really?
Just because I wasn't playing with people like when I was 18, even at uni, wasn't necessarily playing with people that were my like closest friends. Like I'm probably more friendly with them now than I was back then, but I didn't necessarily fit in with like the culture and
I think that's fair.
All of those things.
I had a win at all cost mentality, and I think I always have, irrespective of my surroundings or the people I was with, mainly because of probably my own insecurities. So like myself, you go back to that you versus you thing. I think I had that from a very early age. But is it something that you've developed, that you versus you? Because back then, if it was you versus you, you'd have like a win at all cost, because I just couldn't hack being a loser.
Yeah, but I guess I didn't have that back then, I don't think. No. And like I would, I guess through everything I've done from, you know, the age of 13, like you said, I would rely on just my natural ability to like get through things, whether that's in school. I didn't really do any work at school. Whether it's in sport, I didn't necessarily try the hardest until like things happened where I'd need to try harder, like if it was a grading game or things like that. But yeah, it's not something that I open and honest, I didn't have that like tenacity that you did.
Yeah. So looking back now at 33, right? You're not over the hill when it comes to sport at all. I think you've shown that very recently in some of the competitions, but now having perspective that like you're not always going to have it from like an age or opportunity standpoint. Do you regret any of those things? Definitely. Whether it's like academically, definitely could have done so much better, but I don't know. Part of it might have been because I hated school so much. Like I hated going to school. I remember, you know, pretending to be ill for so many times. And then I didn't enjoy university either. I went there just because, you know, Dad said that I needed to go to uni. Went there and didn't really enjoy being there. But I just did it, you know, to please him, essentially. And that might have, again, bled into the fact that I just kind of
floated through some of these things without giving them a proper crack.
I think that's a really nice piece because it gives probably context to some of the questions that we're going to come on to answer, even though we were brought up under the same roof. Very very clear differences to how we approach life, and I can't put my finger on why that is. I do think you had things a little bit easier because I paved the way, but also maybe because you didn't actually care as much. So like,
I also think mum and dad probably just gave up by the point
yeah, that's fair. So you touched on dad a couple of times there. I obviously spoke about dad quite a few times because I owe him a lot in terms of like my discipline and maybe that level of like, I said, I referenced the fact that it was me versus me because for fear of failure. I think dad instilled in me or us, because of his ethnicity and because of coming to the country and working, as he had to, that we had to overachieve if we wanted to see success. Did you feel the same? And we've never spoke about this.
I mean, I heard the same things and I thought the same things, but I think there needs context with this, but I think through, again, because I didn't necessarily work hard at too many things, but I still was able to achieve those things, whether it was in school, it even wasn't the best grades, but I got through whatever. But then also, I think I actually rebelled against dad twice as much as you did, whereas you kind of not fell in line, but you would.
No, I think I very much did.
Yeah, I didn't, and that's why. I think that then I carried that into school where I was like, the teachers can go fuck themselves. I'm not going to listen to what they tell me.
Yeah. I mean,
I remember getting a letter home from school, something about my behaviour, and mum saying that I needed to write a letter back in to apologise. And I was just like, no, I'm not writing a letter. And I remember dad saying something. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. So they internally suspended me for it.
Really? Yeah, looking back, it makes perfect sense. I think I was somewhat fearful of dad in the sense that like I didn't want to let him down. Whereas I think it wasn't about letting him down or not letting him down. There was just a level of like rebelliousness that you had that I didn't really have. It's probably why I was a bit more. I'd want to impress the coaches. I'd want to do all those things. Whereas I don't think you necessarily did. I
think. By the time that all of these coaches then came to have me, they already knew who you were. So it was like, I didn't necessarily need to impress them, if you know what I mean. I was already in their head because they'd seen you play or whatever, which was probably a easier ride for me when I got to those things. Yeah.
Okay, let's fast forward into uni. So you referenced the fact that you went to university because you wanted to keep dad happy. That's something I've sort of discussed before. Sort of education and academia was a big... It was forced upon us every day. So you went to uni and you studied business and law. Law. Studied law with business. Sorry.
Law with business. Yeah.
How did that come about? Why?
So if you get 5 different applications, right? You can apply to 5 different ones. If you looked at all 5 of them, they were all a completely different topic. So you had, I think, construction management at Loughborough. You had human resources at Bristol UE or something, and all of these random things. And then I remember watching Suits at the time.
This is classic.
And I thought myself a little Harvey Specter, so law went down there as well. And it was
is that genuine?
Genuine. Well, I mean, I remember watching some kind of law show, whether that was around at the same time. And I remember thinking, Dad would be on board with this because Uncle Mario was a lawyer, and they came from a family where everyone was either doctors, lawyers, or whatever. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to go from number 3 child to number 1 child.
I'd already fucked it by then and studied sports science, exactly. So this is your opportunity.
I remember the delight on his face when I told him I was going to be a lawyer.
How was university? What was that experience like? So for anyone listening, myself and Charlie actually ended up at the same university. So we both went to Nottingham Trent. So I was in my final year when you came into Freshers, right? So we had a year together, which is cool.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't actually meant to go to Nottingham Trent. I was meant to go to Loughborough. Got into Loughborough. And then when we got our results, my girlfriend at the time didn't get into Nottingham Trent. So I was like, cool, that's my second choice. You're not going there. My best friend's there. You're there. His brother was there. So I was like, I'll transfer and I'll go there. So I went to Nottingham.
You gave up on Loughborough to go to Trent?
Yeah.
Fuck, that's big.
And
I didn't even know
Probably one. I know it was a sponsored position to go to Loughborough.
Seriously?
Yeah, I don't know if I got the sponsorship in the end, but it was meant to be a
sponsored as what?
Because it was in construction management, so you'd go and find a company that would some kind of sponsorship through your course, then you'd essentially go and work for them after.
So your offers were for different courses at different universities?
Yeah. Life could have gone a lot differently.
All right, fine. So you gave up on Loughborough. I mean, Loughborough was my dream. Unfortunately, I plagiarised my, what was it called, personal statement?
Yeah.
My personal statement.
I remember it was your dream, so it's probably part of the reason why it was the only uni I went to look at was Loughborough. The only uni. It was my number one choice. Went all the way through it, and then some rash decision to go to Trent, because that's where everyone from Harpenden was going there.
Yeah. And your girlfriend actually at the time ended up being there.
Yeah.
What was uni experience like for people that maybe listen to this that might be wanting to go to university and things? I know you're probably going to say it's a waste of time, but.
I mean, I had 3 good years with just some good people. But if I had no interest in the degree I was doing, because I didn't do any research. So that's probably where, looking back, if I did my research, I'd probably have found some courses that actually aligned more with, who I am. And actually would have been going to. I remember my first year, I got a letter back because my attendance to classes was 11% or something like that, 10 to 20%.
So when you say aligned with who you are, back then, who did you think you were?
Well, it was like I had an interest in property, so probably going and doing a real estate degree would have been something that interests me, or a business degree. But I thought.
Do you think it's fair to say that the only thing you've ever known you wanted to do is be really rich?
Yeah, probably.
No, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I think it's more freedom.
Right, that makes sense.
Freedom, yeah. Which comes probably with a level of finances, yeah. But not having to answer to someone, being able to do what I want when I want in my own time.
I mean, that makes so much sense. You never probably you've never been asked the question so directly, but that makes so much sense because. I'm hearing someone that didn't really know what the fuck they wanted to do, but they're kind of good at all these different things, but they don't really like authority. They want a level of autonomy. So the course is...
Half of me wants to just go live on a beach with my 3 wives. And then...
You just got married 2 days ago.
Yeah, there'll be 3 more by then. 2 more by then. And then half of me wants to be Harvey Specter.
Okay, fine. So university comes to an end.
Yeah.
And... You didn't go into law, so...
No, I didn't.
Then what happened?
In all of my summers, when all of my classmates were going and doing their, work experience with law practice and things like that, I was doing sweet FA, just at home chilling, either, working random jobs or trying to find holidays to go on. And then after uni, came back.
Do you know now why I say that you always had it easy? Because of that. Like, that was always my experience. And during the summers, I was like fucking working, trying to make cash.
I was still working, trying to make cash.
Loosely.
No, 100% was, because I was doing the same jobs as you.
Yeah, okay. Some summers you were. But you fell into those jobs because I was there.
Yeah.
So it was like, fuck, Charlie just always lands on his feet.
It's quality having a good older brother, mate.
Fair play. You're winning so far at life with this tactic. So yeah, so you're not productive in your summers, using it in line with your course, and then you finish university with what did you get in your degree?
I think he's called Desmond.
You want my dad when he saw it, he got a 2-2. Fucking hell.
Quickly went back from number 1 child to number 3 again. It was the same look when I showed him my A-levels, the same look when I showed him my GCSEs.
It's such a distinguished look as well. His eyes like triple in size. Reaches straight for his belt. So you finish university with a 2-2.
Yeah.
Complete waste of time. Then what?
And then I remember interviewing in London with, 10s or 20s of different roles, and actually being unsuccessful in a lot of them.
Due to what? Degrees?
No. It was more I heard you talk about it with Grayson as well. So the energy change when something went from talking to me about the job role or, all of these more formal things, and then going into anything that was more active or sport, and then asking about rugby, and I'd like switch into this completely different person. And I remember them being like, I just don't think you actually want this job. And I remember going and actually interviewing with our, best mate Adam's company. And I remember leaving the interview and Adam calling me like, mate, like, what the fuck was that about? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you just said you weren't fucking interested in it. And
what Adam's boss had said that to Adam.
Yeah. And I couldn't actually recollect like coming across that way, but it was obviously clear that, when they asked me about, the job role of being a recruiter, I didn't have any interest in it. The only interest I had in going to that role was because, they were making good money and that was something I was interested in. But the actual job role itself too's
very, I think, very, very relevant as well, because you see a lot of people, what you're probably not able to do is fake that interview to a point where you because you're so real, to look interested when you're genuinely not interested. Whereas a lot of people finish university, and because that's literally the path that they're told they have to go and follow, like go and join that corporate job and just take a job and just figure it out whilst you're in the job, and they kind of bluff through that process. Some people will go into recruitment out of general enthusiasm, and we're picking on recruitment just being the topic that we're talking about, but any job for that matter, and kind of put on a show within that interview and get the job, and then they find themselves stuck in a job. The money's then coming in, and they're then in this kind of rat race of just and routine of doing something, and then they hard to break it.
Yeah.
And we'll go on to kind of where you made the hard sort of circuit breaker and kind of your then inflection point into fitness, because I think that is, whilst at the time for me it was just like, why the fuck is this guy not getting his head down and just cracking on with a career? I think the reality is you just didn't really know what you wanted to do then, and it certainly wasn't those things. So you interview, you don't get any roles.
I mean, I remember, again, interviewing with one of our friends, Justin, and I got the role there, but it just wasn't something that interested me, like earning.
Why were you going to the interviews?
Because I thought that's what I should be doing. Again, didn't know what I wanted to be doing or...
At what point did you think this is a waste of time? When they're actually interviewing you, or... Because I just wouldn't go to an interview if I knew I wasn't going to get through it. Because I was like, what's the point? It's just another L.
Yeah. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then I guess from there, got a job in Tesco head office in procurement. Fuck knows why.
I remember when you got it, you're like, I'm going to work at Tesco head office. And I was like, I need to try and make this sound cool. So when I tell people, it doesn't look as if my brother's a flop.
At the point, around that time, I knew I wanted to go into something to do with fashion. That's genuinely something I wanted to do. But I was like, how the fuck am I going to get into this role when I went and studied law at university, didn't do a law degree, haven't done anything in fashion or anything like that. I say fashion, in menswear or something like that. And then I didn't want to go and earn £0 and, work from that position. So I couldn't go and be an intern at something.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a catch-22.
So we were training together at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think I went probably training with each other, yeah. And then I went traveling, didn't I?
Yeah. So for sort of context, at this stage, I had my PT business and I had a small studio, and me and Chad started to train together. I think that's probably where we started to have a mutual love for well, we obviously both loved training at the time, but I think our love for training was amplified by the fact that we were training alongside each other, and then we got all the added benefits of not only just improving ourselves from a strength and fitness perspective, but doing it with cool people and that kind of camaraderie in the gym. And then I remember a period where it was one summer, and did you go traveling pre or post Tesco's?
Post
Tesco's. Did you take a job after you got back from traveling?
No, I was about to go back to Australia.
Okay, because I remember you quit your job from Tesco's because you didn't have enough holiday to take. You quit a job because you didn't have enough. Was it the Tesco job?
Yeah. I'm about to quit this one as well because I've only got 7 days left on my holiday. It's absolute piss take.
So yeah, I think we were all going to. I moved to America for 5 months, and we were all going to Vegas. And you were in this corporate job, and you wanted to go to Ibiza at the start of the summer, and then Vegas. Come and join us in Vegas at the end of the summer. And you didn't have enough holiday to take.
Yeah.
So you just quit your job, came to Vegas, and then for the next at least 12 months, must have been 12 months.
Nah, they took me back actually.
No, you went. Then you went traveling.
Yeah, but they did take me back. I got back and I was so good at procurement that they needed me back in the office.
So traveling was Australia, New Zealand?
Australia, Thailand, and then here we go. On the way back, stopped in Dubai, and then I was going to live there.
Yeah,
so
I remember it.
I remember I got offered a role there in FX trading.
Random.
Yeah.
I remember thinking when you quit your job, I was like, this guy's mad. Yeah. You came to Vegas and then you just literally went traveling. But it seemed as though the whole time I was like, where's he got the cash to have gone traveling and be so like laissez-faire about life? Because for someone that really wanted to, you did, like, I remember you taking jobs and things, but for someone that wanted to be rich or wealthy.
Tesco at the time did a 0% for 12 months credit card.
Is that what you took out?
Yeah. 0%.
Bro, I didn't have a credit card until I was 30 something.
0% for 12 months. And I thought, it's a get rich quick scheme here, baby.
That again is just another key difference between us, because I didn't take a credit card out until I was 30 and someone told me you need a credit card to build your credit score.
Still ain't paid it off, mate.
You know? So one of the questions later on from someone was like the transition from corporate life into fitness, because I think probably a lot of people, in fact, loads of people, and I know this through the PFCA business where we qualify coaches, are probably unfulfilled. You know, they went into those interviews after university and just maybe bluffed their way through it to get that job, and now they're 5, 6, maybe even longer years down the road, and they're like, "Fuck, this isn't actually my true passion." And it's very fair to say that you hadn't found anything you were that passionate about that married passion with the fact you could earn money and you had freedom, autonomy, etc. So one of the questions that someone actually asked was like, what was that transition like? And I think for me, we sort of fell upon it. So I tell the story of how we started the business. I've told it before. So like, how do you remember the inception of Marchon?
I think you were like at a loss, and you were thinking, I need a big player when we open this. No, I remember we'd gone to Goa for Dad's 75th birthday. We came back and I was ready to move back to Australia. And then I remember you mentioning that you potentially had this space. And I don't know whether you sat me down and was like, look, this is, you know, it's a proper job opportunity. And, you know, look what I've done. And this is the kind of lifestyle that you can still lead. Because back then it was, you know, very different to how it is now. And that was something that appealed to me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely can't remember how it went. I remember sitting down going, like, Alex is the guy that I need, because he had this sort of coaching history. Been to university, studied the same things I was doing.
Would have been a boring gym if it was just the two.
Yeah, I mean, probably would have been a very different story. But I remember sort of propositioning him and going, look, mate, I think you can, you know, leave professional sport as an S&C coach. That was the journey he was on. Come and join me in this thing. And he was like, no, I've invested sort of 5, 6 years into that journey now. I can't walk away from that. And I was like, fuck, I need to. You know, who else can I bring in that, you know, I trust and what have you? And you were a bit of a loose end, and I sort of pitched it to you, and you're like, yeah, I'm keen. And then now we've got FOMO, I think, and was like, yeah, fuck it, I'm actually keen too. And I was left with like 2 of you. And I was like, I didn't need 2. Or it's not that I didn't need to. I was like, I don't really know how to build this with 2 people. I didn't really know how to build it with 1. I just knew I needed more than myself. Anyway, we end up with the 3 of us. So what was, I think, your interpretation of it back then? Because I was earning pretty good money and had a level of freedom as I made my own hours, you know, as a freelance trainer. And I was doing something that I was genuinely passionate about. So you probably saw all those things. So what was your perception of what, back then it was called March Athletic and it was a humble gym. What was your perception about what you were going into?
Back then, I think you'll probably agree as well, it was probably a short-term fix for me, right?
Yeah.
It was never something that both of us thought I was going to do long-term. Because even our first conversations were, I want to be in London. You're like, okay, just work Monday to Wednesday here in Harpenden, and then Thursday, Friday, you can go up to London, be with your boys, coach some people up there. That never came to fruition. But it was probably more of like a short-term thought, you know, because maybe I was going to go back to Australia or, you know, one of those things. Which, I mean, going from the corporate world into that, I can only describe it as like a massive weight off my shoulders. Because of the freedom that I then had, I was with people that I was like enjoyed their company and learned a hell of a lot from. Whereas before it was a group of people I could not care about, couldn't even tell you their names now, doing something that I could not care about.
Yeah, so I remember those early days as like an apprenticeship for you, even though I think I probably truly believe you weren't going to be.
I don't know if you remember, but I was running the online stuff for a year before that.
You were.
Your one-to-one stuff.
Yeah.
Whether they know that yet or
not. So there are still a few OG like legacy people that are still very familiar with the business that remember you as like the original coach. I think I've told the story of the online business, even though it was accelerated post-COVID and probably more recently via the app. People know it for the app, right? It actually started back in whenever that was, 2015. And because of the because of how much time we spent together from a training standpoint, like we had the same secret sauce when it came to the way we wanted to train and put workouts together because of the influence of rugby and strength and conditioning. Like we wanted to be really strong. We spent loads of time down the track. As kids, we used to go to athletics, and sprinting was a big part of what we used to do. You know, this kind of like multi-sport childhood that we had. Training never was always about just like doing bodybuilding or isolated exercises. Like we wanted to look good. In fact, you looked $1 million back then as well.
Did indeed.
But we had, we
secret sauce.
We trained it that way. And I think it's important for people to know that you'd played a very prominent part in the start of the business, but you were somewhat still not committed to it being a long-term future. Like for me back then, I'd put literally everything I could into that business, and it was a do or die for me because I was very unfulfilled doing the one-to-one thing. Told that story, and I wanted to be around people that I genuinely. It just gave me a level of like I was working alongside other people rather than just in a room by myself. And I didn't know what it could go on to become, but I thought I had more opportunity to make it something big, having other people around me. I remember back then for you, it was very much like an apprenticeship in terms of like in-person coaching. You did a lot of the one-to-one stuff. You took a lot of our early clients that probably needed a bit more intimate coaching. And yeah, you did throw yourself completely into it and you never lacked hard work. But at what stage did you think, in fact, I don't know, it would probably more recently than maybe...
You think so?
Would make sense that where you were like, actually, I'm now all into this thing.
It was definitely still in the Marchon Athletic days when I had that feeling. And it was, I don't know, I guess it's just something that I continued to enjoy, continued to learn in, and could see where this thing was going.
So what was it about it that then made you so excited? Was it like, I can actually fill my pockets here? Because we weren't filling our pockets back there. Was it... Because we were working every hour that God gave us.
As airy-fairy as this sounds, like it was more like just the feeling. The feedback that I'd get from people about how they enjoyed, spending an hour of their time with me was like, oh shit, I'm actually pretty good at this.
This is powerful though, because this is very different, right? To then the 10 years prior where it was very much about, I don't really care what it is. I'm going to go with those marquee sort of like A-grade jobs that pay well to now a feeling of what you get from coaching. Because that is the beauty of coaching. Yeah. And as much as like Marchon is this fairly successful business now that has all these outlets of things, nothing is better than when someone sends you that message or tells you, or you see it with your own eyes when they unlock something that you genuinely know they're changing their life. And I spoke to Jackson actually in the car earlier about a lot of businesses in this space right now are selling services, they're selling products, or they're selling a workout. Whereas what we've genuinely managed to do over the last 7-8 years is sell a life-changing lifestyle. Yeah. And it's very much attributed to the early days of that formula that we'd put together. It's powerful to hear you say that was the changing point, because for reference, we weren't paying ourselves loads of money. We didn't have loads of money to pay ourselves. We were working from 6 a.m. through to 9 p.m. pretty much every day, split shifts, Monday to Friday, and working Saturdays.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things there. I mean, that part is like, me and Alex were both single. So we were single. All we really wanted to do was train to look better, eat good food, and work our asses off, which we were able to do every day. So it was like, it didn't feel like work. And fortunately, the people that were coming through the doors were fucking cool people that we got on with. You'd have the odd one here and there that you could probably do without, but we won't name any of them yet.
Some people may listen to this podcast.
Secondly, it's like, being vulnerable again, it probably changed my life because of, naturally, if we go back, and this might have been why I wasn't very good in these interviews and things, I'm a very shy, introverted person. That's why I don't like being on Instagram and all these things. And I could, even maybe in those times where you were like, oh, why isn't he going out and getting a job? I just enjoyed being on my own in my bedroom sometimes, not doing anything untoward.
People might find that quite surprising though, because if you look at all the content that you're on with when it comes to Marchon, you're on the stuff that is like the polar opposite to an introvert, shy person. Yeah. Dancing around, and maybe because you've got literally, not and figuratively, you've got a mask on, and we create these alter egos. That's maybe a protection mechanism. But to hear you're an introvert,
that was probably kind of where it was at the beginning, but now it's become more of who I am, and now I feel comfortable. And so, like when we get on camera, right, it takes me a long time to feel comfortable to then just go off on spiel. Whereas if I meet someone face to face, I can be there, like, not because I'm putting on an act, but I find it much more comfortable in that scenario than when I'm having to be formal and having to present or do something like that.
Yeah, makes sense. So you get this feeling from coaching people and you think, fuck, this is actually not only changing their life, but it's changing my life too.
Yeah.
I don't think there was ever like a formal time where we sat down and I'm like, is this, in fact, there was many formal times I was like, is this just genuinely what you wanted to do? Yeah. So then at this point in which you're like, okay, I've got a sense of purpose and passion here within Marchon. I still remember that you wanted to do your own thing. When did that change? Like, why have you not gone to do your own thing?
I guess that might even go back to the limiting beliefs thing.
Go on.
Just might be like don't necessarily think, because of how I always have been my whole life, don't necessarily think that I can go and make that work. But also I feel so ingrained and a part of what we've done that it's not something that I can walk away from.
So glad you said both those things. That made the rest of this interview very, very easy. Could have gone a different way. Yeah, so I think anyone that's...
Could have turned into an exit interview there, couldn't it?
Could have turned into a fucking fight right there. The way, I think everyone that follows the brand will know that you're such a big part of it now, and your personality is probably the thing that's most endearing, because you give a perspective on Marchon and you bring it to social media that is very different to what mine is. And even though we are very similar, we're also very different. I want to touch a little bit on you as an athlete, because I think people that know you or have trained with you or competed with you know that you are much more serious as an athlete than probably it lets on. I think your resume is like of competition shows that. And I think you, like, if anyone was ready for anything, like, you're genuinely ready to go when anyone says, let's go, in a number of different things. Why don't you lean into that more? Like, why don't you want to be a better athlete? Or why don't you do the things that enable you to be a better athlete?
It's not that I don't want to be a better athlete. I just potentially don't want to give up some of the things that I enjoy in order to become a better athlete.
Yeah, I think that's such a strong message for people as well. Why?
Because I enjoy them.
Yeah, it's great, because I think a lot of people out there that are pursuing a goal, whether it's in fitness or outside of that, they're genuinely doing something they don't enjoy, either for monetary gain or aesthetic gain, or because society says they should be doing it, or because some other influencer said they should be doing it.
Yeah.
And they're stuck with their head up their ass, just carry on doing it. I think this is the beauty of what you've done up to this point, even all those times where I assumed you just like were just this lost kid fucking around. You just hadn't found that thing yet, and it just took you a little bit longer, probably mid to late 20s to realize what you were really passionate about. Mm. Do you ever feel as though, do you ever think when you just see a lot of the fitness industry sort of chatting about competitions and where they're going, you're like, why don't I just for 12 weeks focus on a training program and eat well, sleep right, and then just go and fuck everyone up?
I do, but I also like the thought of being like, yeah, but if I actually did it, I'd be all right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I just like to see it.
I don't know, because I don't, again, going back to like not the boredom thing, but I don't want to pigeonhole myself into, being a CrossFitter or going and being a High Rocks athlete or going and being an ultra runner. It's all, that just seems pretty boring to me.
Fair. I think each their own.
Like, I'd like to just go and do it, be okay at it. Go and do it, be okay at it.
Yeah, I like that. I respect it. So,
and maybe there will be something that at some point I'm like, we'll go all in on this.
It's frustrating for me and people that you don't go all in things and you still seem to do well.
Because if, like, let's say in the gym, and it might be a terrible example, but if we're in the gym and I'm the only person that might be, following a CrossFit program, and I'm just in the corner training on my own, I just don't want to do that.
Yeah, fair.
I'd rather train with you, on the old man's program and
do bicep curls.
Yeah,
I respect that. Let's go back to that point in which Marchon becomes this thing for you. Very passionate about it. What did you want it to become for yourself, and what did you want it to become as a business back then? Because again, I don't think people realize that even though you are very relaxed about a lot of things, you have a very high performance way in which you show up about things. Mm. I think people miss that, and it's so important for them to know it, because it is part of the reason why we're so successful. Is because it's you and a number of other people within the company that you show up in a different way to other people that might visually or even what people consume on social media, it be in a different context, but you still show up with the same level of like high performance and like wanting this to be the biggest business in the world. So what was your vision, or what is your vision now for Marchon? And we've not had this conversation. And what did you want it to become back then?
I think back then when there was three of us, my vision was, we'll have 3 gyms. Ollie will run one of them. I'll run one of them. Alex will run the other.
I think that was our kind of like, we probably
kind of where we,
yeah,
what we thought. But then it was like, if we've got 3 gyms and one of us goes and runs the other one, then we're not together.
Yeah.
Which won't be very fun. Vision for it now, goes back to like the without limits thing. I don't and maybe my forward thinking isn't as good as yours. I don't know where or what this goes to, but I'm fucking enjoying doing whatever it is to try and move it forward.
Yeah. And I also think, again, going back to the complementary skill set, it's kind of, it creates a level of space for me to sort of like formulate a direction or like where I think I want to go, and then to bring it to you and a couple of the obviously key people and going, this is where I think I'm going with this. Like, can you just polish the idea a little bit more, or can you take the idea and run with it and use your skill set? To a point where now, like, I think if we think about the IP of Marchon from a workout perspective, like in the online space, you probably own that the most now. In fact, you do, head of online. You bring together the likes of Paddy and Josh and Jade, represent our most marquee programs with Train and Perform, the real kind of like the essence of what Marchon started as. To a point, like I say, your IP and your expertise in that far surpasses mine now. And I'll often bring, and people might not be privy to this, but when it's things like athexes and stuff, or we're doing workouts or we're doing events, I'll bring those workouts first to you and be like, can you sense check this? Can you give me some ideas? Give me a steer on it. But like I say, that level of like space where I don't have someone going, yeah, but I want the business to go in this direction, and constantly being at loggerheads, that probably allows me to formulate a bit of a plan, bring it to you, and you give me a bit of guidance. I think that's really nice to sort of wrap up there in sort of where we are right now within Marchon. I think we'll take it to the questions that got asked. And I think we've seen elements of like your vulnerability there, which I think is cool. Like, I think you should do that more. And I know that you're going to be making an effort for people that are listening more with sort of social media and personal brand, not for really any other reason than I think it's just really important in this day and age for people that have a bit of influence, and also that people that are so relatable to a lot of people that are trying to do certain things in life or might not know where they're at, that they have an outlet or something they can look towards and be like, oh, it's actually cool that I don't know what I want to do right now. It's actually cool that I'm not as highly strung about having a 6-pack, or it's actually cool that I don't mind changing my training program from week to week to some degree based on who's training on what program, and me being able to move into different, having a training session with different people. The industry will tell you sometimes otherwise, and you can sort of be that guy that's waving the flag for the average Joe. Which brings
average Chad.
Which brings me to my first question. This is from from someone called Harrison Living. I don't know if you might know him. You might know him quite well.
Kill him if this is bad.
He basically says, "What's it like to show up every day as the B-side?"
I'm not answering that, but Harrison, you're getting a headlock first thing when I see you. Okay,
fine. We'll move on. What is the hardest thing working with me?
I think when you and me are actually terrible communicators to each other.
Agree.
And that's probably always where we have flared up in both business and brotherly relationships. And then it's also, I guess, through this process, it's going to sound bad.
No,
through this process, we've probably become less brothers than we were when we came into the process. And it's now more business than it is brothers.
Yeah, I think that's very important for people that are in business with their sibling. And I actually think you hear about some complete horror stories when people are in business as siblings. You hear about complete horror stories when people are siblings not even in business. I think it's been pretty tough for me and you by proxy the fact that I am how I am and you how you are. And like we said, we're sometimes polar opposites of the way we kind of behave and act. And that in business is a recipe for disaster at times. But I think where we have managed to we butt heads, and there's been some obviously vicious arguments at times. But the fact that you're my own flesh and blood kind of always trumps the fact that whatever the issue is at the time.
So you're saying I can have 10 days extra holiday?
I mean, that's Sarah's call. It's not even my call these days.
Flesh and blood.
It's not even my call. You don't even submit holiday.
I fucking have to.
Do you?
Yes.
I wouldn't even know. So what is the hardest thing though? Is it just the fact that I'm your brother?
It's
what's the shit thing about working with me?
I mean, there aren't too many shit things. It's been on the whole has been a fun experience. Definitely a learning experience throughout in how to cope with each other.
Yeah.
Through those like harder times. But I think now we're probably in a position where you actually leave me to be how I am. Yeah. And I probably leave you to be how you are. I think. But then if any of those lines cross, then we'll call each other on it.
Yeah, I think going back to your what makes you tick is a level of like, well, certainly not micromanagement and just being left alone to sort of go with it. And I think now go on to this next question about the online community, which is kind of where you run that, right? I think it took me perhaps too long to give you the trust and give you the reins just because you were my brother. If it was anyone else, they probably would have got it quicker. And I've always kind of said that to you. I think because you're my brother, I make you have to work extra hard to earn the respect's not the word, but just to earn the trust. But now knowing what makes you tick through obviously growing up with you and then seeing your growth and development in business, I think you're in a position now where you kind of have your autonomy over time, strategy, all those kind of things. So what are your personal ambitions for those that don't know, that they probably will, that you run the Marchon training product side? What are your personal ambitions with the online community?
I'd like to grow it to as many countries as possible. Like the idea that I could fly, like when I travel to some of these countries and I'm just in some random gym and some fella comes up to me, he's like, "Hi, I'm," or they even know the brand or they're on the program. Like that, that's fucking cool. So trying to grow that as as big as possible, as vast as possible, and then I guess just the quality of it. Just keep refining and learning. I'm still not the best coach in the world, but being able to justify anything that's within our programs and why and how they're in there is something that I want to continue to do.
I think that's something that people don't know about you as much as how studious you are. Even though you fobbed off school and you fobbed off university, I'll come over to your laptop and you have so many tabs open of like research paper, literature, articles, like reading about stuff when you're putting into your program. Even just general knowledge stuff around property, like you said, finance, the things that you're interested in. You have a knowledge base that has so much more depth and breadth than me. And again, when I talk about your social media like strategy, I'm like, just fucking show people those bits. Like show people that behind the funny guy, there is a level of seriousness and education that backs everything up. I think people can see it once they've gone through your program and actually you see the results of getting stronger, getting fit. Yeah.
But I think part of that again is like this, I guess it's imposter syndrome, right? I came into the industry having not had the qualifications that a lot of people that come into fitness do, like a strength and conditioning degree, a master's, blah blah blah. I kind of went and did a 2-day course in personal training, and there I was coaching on the gym floor. But I'd had all that prior experience of watching you coach and training alongside you. So I've always felt that because I struggle to articulate myself sometimes in front of camera, that it's like inadequate to post those kind of things. So that's, I guess, something I am constantly working on.
Yeah, well, I think going back to that, you did take a 2-day course. I remember at the time you being like, right, you're coming on this journey with me. We need to get you qualified. Yeah. Let's just get you qualified as quickly as possible, because I knew that the qualification, even just like now, isn't worth a bit of paper that's written on. And you literally started coaching from that day in a studio with me and Alex, like learning from. We like to think ourselves as being very good coaches. You did the 10,000 hours as quickly as anyone can do, because you were just working and you were shadowing, and I think that's why your growth was, or your expertise was so accelerated. But there's got to become a point where like that imposter syndrome, and we all obviously get it, and I know you do get it really bad. I think when I asked you to come on the podcast, the first thing was like, why are you asking me to come on the podcast? But you probably give too much respect to certain people in the industry that are like leagues ahead of us in terms of maybe knowledge base, and don't accept the fact that like where you sit in the industry on a scale of whatever coaching, whatever it is, like it's in the top 5%. And actually something, the things that you would say or could say are, and the way you would deliver it is far more streamlined and easy to digest to the masses than actually how those 1 to 3%ers would articulate things. Just another bit of confidence for you to do more of it. And the other thing is, when it comes to imposter syndrome, you run, I would say, the most successful online training business in the UK, if not further afield. You know, everyone looks to us as the inspiration. I think we can confidently say it's one of the biggest here in the UK. You run that. You've been writing those programs since 2015. It's now 2024. So that should give you that level of confidence. There's obviously a couple of questions here about who's the strongest, who's the fittest, and blah, blah, blah. That's always who's going to win an arm wrestle. Who would you say is the strongest?
Depends what the movement is.
This is a very good answer. Go on, what movements do you think you got me on?
All the power movements. Snatch, clean. You probably got me deadlift. We're probably close on deadlift now, I reckon.
Yeah.
Squat, I think we're quite close. Bench, anything upper body, you've probably got me on.
I think anything that requires like absolute strength, if we both train for it, I'd have you. Anything that requires like skill. Yeah. You get, because you're just naturally more coordinated. People can see even like the way you dance, like you can dance. Yeah. I can't do any of that shit. So Chad just has more skill. Fitness wise, I think I've got you. But again, I'd probably work on that way more than
100%.
We spoke about, one question is, was there any big challenge moving from corporate to fitness? But for you, there probably wasn't, because for you, it's like, I'm not going to do something I'm not passionate about.
No, like I said, it was like a weight off my shoulders. And it just felt as easy as anything, going to work, regardless of what the time it was, until what time, with like my best mate, my brother, and something completely new.
If you weren't a coach, what would you be right now? Quick fire.
Property developer.
If there was a gun to your head, you cut the ponytail or shave the tash?
Shave the tash.
I would shave the tash too. Yeah. The hair's going to take you way longer to grow back.
I'm close to being ready to cutting it all off.
Really?
Yeah. I'm a married man now.
That is gonna make Nat very happy.
She might be surprised on that wedding day.
Oh really? What was your first thoughts when I asked you to come and work for me, or work for Marchon?
Excited.
List the sports that you think you can do me in.
Tennis, cricket, badminton, all racket and ball sports.
Nice. What's your fave meal deal?
It's very occasional, so it depends on if you're hungover or if you just want a fresh meal, or any of these things. But the go-to is a egg and cress sandwich.
Fucking rogue.
With some prawn cocktail crisps and a Coke Zero.
What's it like being my brother?
It's good fun. By the way, you said no one-word answers at the beginning of this, and now you're asking me quick-fire one-word answers.
Well, that was actually two. That was 2 words. Well, you can go unpack it. No, unpack it. Come on.
It's good fun.
Make me blush. What's it like being my brother?
It's good fun riding on your coattails.
Okay, we have a couple more. Someone's asking about our relationship growing up. What do you think of our relationship growing up? Did we always get on?
We didn't always get on. There was probably periods where we definitely fell out and didn't speak to each other for a long time.
Yeah,
I can remember those. But I think it's probably this wasn't too dissimilar from any brother childhood stories, I don't think. As you've never gone into this, but sometimes things weren't always rosy at home with us and our parents. And I think...
Do you mean the relationship between our parents?
Yeah. So...
I've never gone into that sort of like publicly, but I talk to people about it.
Yeah. I think it all looked good, big house, family is still together, blah, 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 but things were never great, or there was oftentimes things weren't great. And I think during the younger years, you probably protected me from that a little bit, but then when I guess I had to fend for myself when you and Sarah had left the house with a lot of that stuff. But in terms of our brotherly relationship, I think that's probably something that always brought us together.
Like a weird feeling came over when you started talking about that. What are the pros and cons of running a business being siblings? I think we touched on a few of these things. What are the pros?
We get to do some cool shit together.
Yeah.
It's more like a day-to-day thing. Like for the past, 10 years or so, we've done a lot of things day-to-day together, which a lot of brothers don't have that opportunity to do. Cons,
Go on.
It's probably just when we fall out, but
Yeah.
it's the same as when you're a brother.
I think. Oh, if we had to fight to the death in March on HQ, who would win?
Oh, if it's a fight to the death.
Oh, we used to have some fucking vicious fights.
I mean, the last time we rolled, I did tap you out twice.
You did. Yeah, I'll give you that.
I don't know. I'm probably more prone to using implements that would penetrate your skin, whereas if there was no weapons, Ollie would probably do me.
I think we're about there. Is there any questions you got for me, Chad?
Not off the top of my head, no.
What about you,
Sam? Is this podcast going to make? Is it going to?
This is going to
make the YouTube.
This is going out on Monday. This is genuinely going out on Monday. I think it's been brilliant. I think it's been exactly what we needed. Sammy, do you think we've missed anything? No. You happy? We touched on everything.
Maybe next time I'll come back and I'll interview you. I'll have the iPad in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think we've touched on everything. I think everything you sort of relayed is very in line with what I thought. Growing up, I genuinely was like, why is this kid not act how I act? But you're your own man, and I can't. You're going to behave how you want to behave, and I think I
think you actually think that about loads of everyone. Why does everyone not just think like I think or do what I do?
Yeah, I think I probably do. Which I think is why working with you helps, because when new people come into the business, if I don't naturally get, like, if that person isn't on my wavelength, in fact, your best skill is your ability to make people feel super comfortable very quickly, and that level of rapport that you can build with people. You do it in with strangers, you do it with people in the gym, and you almost bring that component where I don't have, like I said, to compliment me, to make the softer side of me that's not there, it's there because it's there every day through you.
Yeah. And that's something. This might be going back to things, but I've genuinely made a conscious effort to always do that. And part of that is because I don't want people to think that you're a dickhead.
Fair. Thank you for having my back. I mean, that's cool. I mean, it's very, and I've probably, because it's there for me every day within work, I probably have not done the work to work on myself where I can be a dickhead. And not dickheads, maybe not. Yeah, maybe dickhead. But where I'm not polished in those things, you kind of protect me, which I think is what is one of the biggest pros of working in business together, is that where some of us are deficient, whether it's with personality, sort of, with character traits or way in which we deal with certain situations, you're able to either diffuse it or give a different perspective, look through a different lens, and give me some good counsel. So yeah, I think that brings the podcast with Chad to the end. This will go out on Monday. I think we should do it again, but I think what we've done is frame how we've got to today with your involvement in it. You are an irreplaceable part of what Marchon is. I think what you've done with March Online is fantastic. We're at a community now of over thousands of people all around the world. I think the brand has got some real traction right now. And, as we said, the strategy for this year and beyond is to try and put you more into the forefront, because I think, people will really resonate with it. Starting with the Run Club that we're going to launch in London and coming cities, you're going to be the host of that. So yeah, thanks, brother. I really appreciate the journey up to this point, and I'm very excited about the fact we're just getting started.
Thank you very much.